Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our latest episode of Muslims Uncensored. And it's a very special episode indeed because we are joined once again, me and Roshan that is, by Dilly Hussain. Dilly Hussain, of course, is not going to be discussing his usual subject matter here on British Muslims, but actually he will be discussing his fantastic journey, his fascinating journey to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, which I'm sure many of you have already seen some of his coverage. If you haven't, make sure you get over to the YouTube channel or to our Five Pillars Twitter account, where you can see a lot of the interviews he's been conducting with key members of the government there, and also touring and exploring the Islamic Emirate 3 years on after the vile occupation, the Western illegal occupation of that country finally came to an end, and the country begins its effort of trying to rebuild itself after the trauma that it has faced. So, Assalamu alaikum, Dilly. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's always a rare pleasure to get you on our show. You've got so much going on with your podcast. Just tell us, how was the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. It was an eye-opening trip. It was one which we kind of delayed. Roshan had already been there twice. So a lot of credit has to be given to Roshan because he went within a couple of months, isn't it?
I think it was a month after, yeah.
Within a month. And this was at a time where many journalists, let alone independent journalists, were going there on their own. So alhamdulillah, Roshan did that. And a lot of the ministers that I spoke to, they remembered that and they appreciate that. The fact that I've come at a time where they've been around for 3 years.
Yeah.
There's a level of security and safety that's been established in the areas, whereas you came within a month. Yeah. And you came alone, and a lot of the guys like Inamullah Salam Ghani, Sahib and others, they remembered that. Balki remembers that, and they send their salams and they appreciate that you came at a time when it wasn't fashionable to come. Because now we've got like YouTubers and travel vloggers going.
Everyone's
right?
going. Everyone's been but me, it seems.
Yeah, you had this English Catholic nutjob YouTuber who actually hates Islam and Muslims. His name's Lord Miles. He went to Afghanistan and made some videos there. A Somali sister from America recently went there and she was getting slated for just giving her honest take on what was happening. But it was an eye-opening experience. It was long overdue. It was in the pipeline since Ramadan.
Yes.
And but it was important that when I went there, I came back with unique content and not kind of repeat what Roshan already had done. And Roshan had done a lot in his 2 visits. So I think the objective was key interviews, wasn't it?
Let me, before you come in, because I know you've got a lot of questions you want to ask and stuff like that, let me just play out a clip of you on location in Afghanistan, just so people get a taste of what you were saying.
Sisters, I pray your way, inshallah ta'ala. Many of you will know that I'm currently in my first visit to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. I'm currently on Wazir Akbar Khan Hill. This is a hill that was named after one of the very earliest presidents of Afghanistan. But the symbolic reason as to why I'm here is because the flag right behind me is the largest kalima flag that exists in the world in any color. So think of all the different flags that you could possibly think of, nation states or otherwise. This is the largest flag with the kalima on it. But what's more interesting is what is right next to it, and that is the Dome of the Rock Masjid, a replica part of Masjid al-Aqsa. And it's actually very telling and reflective of the mindset and the psyche of the leadership here in Afghanistan. And that is one whereby Masjid al-Aqsa and the occupation of Palestine is something which is very near and dear, not only to the hearts of the leadership, but to the everyday average Afghani. Every person I've spoken to is fully aware of what's happening in Gaza.
So you just arrived.
First day, yeah.
That was first day.
I
must say, you look very happy to be there.
Yeah, it was beautiful being there because this is a country that's been ravaged with nearly half a century of war, right? First it was the Russians and USSR, and then they had like a 6-7 year period, there was a civil war, and then that's it was America and NATO. And considering a country that's gone through this much war and trauma, they were people that were very generous, very loving, very welcoming. Many of them had very little, but they would give you everything. Whether that's Pashtun or the Tajiks that I met as well. And it was a country which aesthetically wasn't that different to other developing Muslim majority countries. So if you went to the bazaar or the streets of Kabul, it's not like, oh, this is distinctly different to maybe the streets of Marrakesh or Fez or Sylhet or some parts of Pakistan. In that regard, it had that same feeling of a developing Muslim majority country, I thought I was going to see more like destroyed buildings and architecture, right, as a result of 40 years of war. But then again, I only went Kabul and Kandahar. You traveled a lot more, so
Yeah.
so I didn't see that. But yeah, it was a country which they love Islam. They're proud of the fact that they got rid of the occupation. The people that I spoke to seemed very supportive of the Taliban or the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. But there were obviously some areas which were a contentious issue for even the supporters of Taliban. The country's obviously had $9.5 billion of its assets frozen. The only country that formally recognizes it is China. There's sanctions, or at least there's a veneer of some sanctions that have been placed on in Afghanistan. So unemployment's very high. Poverty's better than it was 2 years ago when it was literally in a state of famine. So it's better, but still, people are hungry. People are struggling to make ends meet. And in that context, the 3 years that they've been in power has been very interesting, and they seem to have done a lot, whether it's the drug rehabilitation, the opium reduction, roadworks, infrastructure and development.
That's what I find really interesting when you talk about Afghanistan, because what we hear usually in the English language world is what the BBC, CNN tells us, and all of these Afghan living over here, educated over here, that hate. They don't even like Islam, quite frankly, many of them, that comment on it. So all we hear is that, quite frankly, the government that's ruling the Islamic Emirate now are basically a bunch of uneducated, backward barbaric savages that came from some cave somewhere and have now seized control of the country. That's the narrative that's pushed here, unfortunately. The fact that you've gone there and you've provided us this perspective where actually, if you go and speak to an honest, ordinary Afghan in the streets of Afghanistan itself, actually this group couldn't have taken power unless it had genuine popular support on the ground. And this is a point which has to be acknowledged. Otherwise, what's the point in even talking about Afghanistan if you're just going to make up some fantasy world stuff? I mean, Roshan, you've been there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the Taliban are the single most popular group in Afghanistan, without a doubt. But it is a country with a lot of different ethnicities, sects, and a lot of them are anti-Taliban. That's the reality. And Kabul itself, when I was there 2 years ago, I would say it was a majority anti-Taliban city. Because you said, why were there no destroyed buildings? That's because Kabul actually thrived under the occupation. That's where all the money went. But the areas which are bombed were the countryside areas.
Yes, of course.
And southern Afghanistan. That's where all the death and destruction
Helmand,
happens.
Herat, Kandahar, Panjshir, and these kind of places.
But in terms of the Taliban, they do have a lot of popular support. But I would say that Afghanistan is still a divided country.
Absolutely. I mean, if you speak to... Look, they have their critics, they have their haters, they have those who have opposed them, they have those that have actually been at war with them, right? For 20 years. And many of the Talibs that I spoke to, they said actually it was our own brothers who assisted the occupiers that were actually more vicious in their torture. And more vicious in their oppression against us. The Americans and the British and NATO, they dealt with us in a particular way. But our own people that colluded and collaborated with
The Pakistanis.
Yeah. No.
The ISI in particular.
But also like the native
Oh, you mean
Afghans.
like native Afghans? Yeah. Sorry.
Even native... No, they were talking mainly about native Afghans.
Okay.
They were saying that they were actually worse. What Pakistan did was absolutely like crazy. I mean, in terms of treachery under the Musharraf regime. But they don't hold all Pakistanis responsible for that.
No.
But our trips were very different because you said that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously when I went, I was staying independently in a hotel, which was run actually by different ethnicities, not Pashtuns, people who had worked for the Americans. So I had that when I was in my hotel, but also I interviewed Islamic Emirate officials and stuff like that. Whereas when you went, you were mainly with the Islamic Emirate officials.
Yes.
So how were the Taliban? How did you find the Taliban?
They were, mashallah, they were very welcoming. They were great hosts, very respectful. They would treat you with honor, and they would be very welcoming to whether it's their office or their home or their private space. They weren't flamboyant people. You rarely, if ever, had them raise their voice. They spoke very little but spoke succinctly. They seemed like very basic men in terms of like my garments and their garments were no different. If you didn't know who the individual was, you wouldn't know who the senior minister was amongst them. That's one thing you acknowledge that straight away.
I have a story about that because I went to a government department and I mistook the guy who was better dressed
Yeah.
as the minister, and in
Yeah.
fact, it was the guy who was
There you
in
go.
worn-out shalwar kameez that was the minister.
And that's
Yeah.
that's very common. So whenever you'd see, for example, Nasazabila Mujahid or Balki or any of the deputy ministers, their seniors and their peers wouldn't be dressed that differently,
No.
right? So there was that level of piety and normalcy and a lack of extravagance, if anything.
I mean, when I went, I'll be honest about it. I felt inferior to them. That's because obviously, generally, the way I've been brought up is to feel confident about myself and who I am, and I don't feel inferior to anybody in the West. But when I went to Afghanistan, I felt inferior to these people because I felt that, and even the ones that were a lot younger than me. That's one thing about the Taliban; they're very young.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
even the ministers, whatever, they're guys in their 30s, you know.
Mid-30s, late 30s.
Yeah, and the foot soldiers could be teenagers.
Yes,
you know.
100%.
And I was thinking, you know, these are people that have lost limbs, they've lost family members, they've been in the caves, in the mountains, fighting the Americans
Exactly.
on jihad for 20 years, whatever. And I'm just thinking, what have I done? I've done a few tweets, you know, and
Yeah,
I
similar
felt inferior
feeling.
to them.
Yeah. So exactly the same feeling, and you kind of tend to talk less around them. So that's one thing I learned, and that's a good tarbiyah for me. Like, I'm someone who generally in a gathering or a setting, I like conversing, right? Sometimes I may like leading conversations or initiating conversations. Around them, it's more to do with listening, actually listening, and then maybe asking the right question, because they're not there to answer all your questions either, right? Which we'll get to at some point on the show about the things which are sensitive and those things that are not. But yeah, they were very respectful. They seemed very humble and pious. You know, wallahi, not at any point did I feel like they made me feel like inferior or that I'm in the presence of power or like the victors. They're very down to earth.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't feel inferior because I was scared or
No, it's
intimidated.
inferior to do with our lack.
It was
yeah.
it was more just respect, I think.
Yeah, like these guys, they fought jihad, they fought the Americans, they fought the Brits, they fought NATO, they fought Russians, they fought, you know, they sacrificed their lives, their families. There wasn't a single Afghan in any of the planes that hit 9/11. There was, you know, Afghanistan wasn't even entirely against holding Bin Laden to account. They just said to the Americans, give us the evidence and we will try him according to
I think
Sharia
they
law.
offered a third party or third country.
Yeah, third
where he
mediator.
could be tried. Yeah,
But just remember this, brothers and sisters and friends, not a single Afghan was on those planes which hit the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. There wasn't a single Afghan, right? The Taliban at that time wasn't even against the idea of holding Bin Laden to account. It's just that it wasn't what the Americans accepted. And they paid for 20 years of war and hundreds and thousands of people have died. Afghanistan was a country where they tested new weapons. And even during Trump, he tried the mother of all bombs, which killed hundreds of people. And but you know, they did diplomacy in Doha, and they did guerrilla warfare and insurgency in the mountains of Afghanistan, and which led to them basically taking Afghanistan without necessarily firing that many bullets in the month of August 2021. Yes, there were fights and insurgency battles that led up to it, but that month, most of the country was falling flat without firing a single bullet. There are people who oppose the administration. There's no doubt there's ethnic tensions there. There's still a feeling that the Pashtunwali, the way of the Pashtun, is being imposed upon non-Pashtuns. And whilst the Hanafi fiqh, which the Taliban or the Islamic Emirate have adopted, they include within it urf, which is normal. The Ottomans did this within Hanafi school, whether you're in Bangladesh or Afghanistan or in Turkey, your cultural customs have to be considered or incorporated within your interpretation of Sharia.
Yeah.
And that's something very interesting enough they actually said to me as well. Some of the senior guys, they said, look, this system that we have here and what you see, this we do not expect this from Turkey.
Yeah.
We do not even expect this from Bangladesh. You will have your own Sharia, which is
the way we live,
But this is the way we live. We are not just a conservative society, we're an ultra conservative society, an extremely male-led patriarchal society.
Yes.
We are overly protective over our women folk, and we do not deem the conventional Western way of education to be the way forward. In fact, we deem it to be problematic. We get to decide and define what is education, but we are in a situation where a week after I left, they consolidated the rule that, you know, schools...
So women now have to wear the burqa, I believe. That's obligatory in public.
Yes.
And they can't raise their voices too loudly.
Yeah. So they can't sing poetry in public. They can't read books out in public. And I know, again, look,
Should we deal with this issue now?
Yeah, I think so.
The girls' education and stuff
Yeah.
like that, because that's what everyone is. That's not what I'm focused on, but that's what a lot of Muslims as well, not just non-Muslims, a lot of Muslims focus
but just to wrap up on the
Yeah.
on the kind of Taliban senior officials, the mid-level guys, the
Yeah.
security, up and down. These are men that I saw were committed to their faith. They all prayed their salah.
That's it. They love Islam.
They love Islam. They are ummatic in their mindset. They themselves do not believe the project or this aspiration is only for Afghanistan. They understand the reality is that it can only be for Afghanistan. That is their remit.
Yes.
As for other Muslim countries, that's on you to follow your aspiration, your political destiny in line with Islam. But these were very humble guys who did not live extravagant lives, that loved Islam. And they fought jihad. And so many of them have missing fingers, missing hands, missing eyes, missing legs. And I've never been around so many AK-47s, M4 rifles and RPGs, but felt safe and secure.
Yeah.
And everyone has a story of...
Well, sometimes they've got their AK-47s on their laps and like, they're pointing towards you and like just like because they're so nonchalant.
Yes,
but I'm glad what you said that they love Islam, because that's what came that counts a lot in my book, because I'll be honest, brothers and sisters, you know, I've traveled a lot in the Muslim world. I've not always felt the people in certain countries, whether it's the Arab world or the non-Arab world. I've not felt that they had that intrinsic love for Islam in their hearts.
Not like consistently across all.
You feel that very strongly.
Yeah. Like, for example, even if you go to Bangladesh, right, the hot country of my motherland, if you go there, not everyone's going to be overtly super Islamic, right? Yes, you'll get people passionate about the deen, but you will also find that in Afghanistan, it's hard to find someone, at least where I was, and the circles that I was moving around with, it was hard to find someone hard-pressed not to have Izzah or Ghaira for Islam. And what was happening around the world. They were buzzing that Hasina stepped down. They were making dua, and they felt very sad and helpless that they couldn't do more for Gaza. So they were fully aware of what's happening to the Uyghurs. But they also understand that, you know, we're a country that's 3 years. No one recognizes us. $9.5 billion frozen.
They can't do much.
We can't, you know, if you're expecting us to liberate Gaza and establish a caliphate the next day and fight for the whole world, I'm sorry, that's just not realistic. We're trying to sort out infrastructure and people making ends meet. But the girls' issue, the girls' education thing is an issue.
How much pressure do you think they're under to change their stance on girls' education, even in the Muslim world? Forget Western feminists, no one cares about them. But in the Muslim world, do you think that they're under serious pressure even from other Muslim majority countries to change on this?
I mean, look, there's lines of communication open, and the relevant diplomats and representatives from those countries, whether it's Qatar or UAE or even ulama from Pakistan, wherever it may be, of course, I'm sure that they are conveying that this particular issue, if they were to reform it or review it, it could make things easier in terms of international acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah. But whether that equates to pressure in their eyes, meaning whether they care, that's different. And I'll tell you why that is. And I'm saying this to you as someone who will openly say in camera, I said this to the brothers, that I could perhaps live there if not struggle due to Western privileges and comforts and stuff like this, right? But definitely it'd be difficult to impossible for my wife or my sisters or my women folk to live in Afghanistan. And I'm honest enough to say that, right? And that's why it's important to say that when I spoke to Taliban officials and ministers, they said this is our interpretation, our version of Sharia. We do not expect others to follow lead or to understand, because they would accept their urf and their customs. So just as an example, it may be the norm in Turkey or elsewhere that women go out to work, that they encourage women's education up to 18 to 21. They said this is not our urf. But the conversation now is, are you saying it's your urf or the urf of the Pashtun, which is them being, you know, kind of imposed upon the rest? Others, that's the criticism. That's the contention. But on the women's education thing, there's three kind of prevailing arguments or theories. Number one, they perceive this issue to be the last final thing that they can stand firm on, and to make a point, not just to the West, but to the world, that this is a principle that we take seriously and we will define and dictate what is girls' education, what that entails and how it's going to be done. Number two is because they genuinely believe, or at least the senior leadership, they genuinely believe that this is something that we don't agree with. We don't believe that girls beyond the age of 12 should get a secular state education, right?
Mm.
And number three, it could be a mix of those two things. It could be leveraging in terms of like trying to not buckle under pressure, but at the same time, a genuine belief that this is something that they don't agree that agrees with their customs and their culture.
Despite that fact, do you think that what's your prediction about the future? Will they potentially?
So let's just let's just clarify a few things as well, right? Girls up to the age of 16 can go to madrasa, and in those madrasas, some secular subjects are taught. A lot of people don't know this, but I saw various madrasas and young sisters that were coming back and forth, and the brothers that I was with, they're not just taught Quran and usul al-fiqh and deen and tajweed, and they're also taught these subjects as well. But if they want to pursue that, they have to go through the madrasa system. And going in the madrasa system means you have to be dressed in a particular way, and it's girls only. There's also a logistical issue of now that if we're going to have an Islamic education, we need to now ensure logistically and from a resource point of view that schools and institutions are able to segregate between men and women. So that if you now do that, if you roll that over nationally, that requires money, resources, new buildings and stuff like that, which they believe at this given time isn't a priority for them. Rebuilding roads, building new roads is a priority with them. Opening up new trade deals with neighboring countries is important. Export, import, strengthening the economy, cracking down on crime and practically minimizing corruption. These are high priorities for them.
Yeah.
If I'm to be brutally honest, for the leadership that I met, the vibe and the message that I got was that they didn't want to talk about it. It was some of them felt
for what reason?
Some of them felt as if we're just tired of people asking us, like, why is it that you come to our country for the first time and the first thing you ask about is why our girls and our women? That's from some. Others, it was just like, look, just leave it. There'll be a resolution soon.
Just wait.
Just wait. And with others, it was just like, look, it's a no-go subject. We're not going to talk about it. So it was a mix of those three things. It was a mix of just have sabr, we will come to our own resolution, let us dictate our own terms. Others were just, stop asking us this, it's the first thing you ask about. Imagine if we went to your countries and asked about your women and your girls. So why is this the first thing you guys ask?
That's something which you noticed when you went, is that the West is obsessing over this issue, but they're not actually reporting on it properly, are they? Because when you went, you did actually meet sisters who were studying,
and they're recruiting for midwifery.
Although you said that,
I mean, women can work as teachers and in the health sector.
And airport security.
Yeah, airport security. The lady that stamped my passport on the way in was.
Oh, the airport security. Many of the airport security staff.
But they can't be like a lawyer or a mechanical engineer or something like that.
Yeah.
So they can't do certain jobs.
Yeah. So engineering is not a subject that they in the future that they would even introduce. Midwifery, nursing, medicine, these avenues can be pursued, but I guess there's a very long, strenuous, vigorous process if you want to pursue that.
Look, I mean, the impression we have in the West is that all girls' education is banned and women can't work at all. Now, that's not true.
That's not true.
It's a partial truth or a 30% truth, maybe.
State school ends at 12.
Yes, exactly.
State school ends at 12.
Look, my impression was that this is their urf, as you say. And Allahu Alam, whether they're right or not. I think most Muslims think that it's a very extreme interpretation of Islamic law. At the same time,
it is an interpretation, though, right?
It's an interpretation. I mean, even the burqa thing, the niqab. Now, a lot of Muslims that I know would say that is a minority interpretation of Islamic law, that women should wear niqab, but actually, I think it might be a majority.
It's not.
Yeah, it might. It's just that
that's actually a lie. Actually, so for example, under the Hanafi school, which has the largest following, it's wajib in certain circumstances and is inadvisable in other circumstances. So in towns and cities where there's a lot of sexual fitna, it becomes wajib on the women to cover their face as well. But where there is security and stability and these kind of crimes do not prevail or are not common, they do not have to wear the niqab. There's this misinterpretation and misconception that the niqab is a fringe opinion or is Saudi culture. No, if you look at Ottoman women in Bosnia, in Albania, they had niqabs. The Ottoman women wore niqabs. Some didn't wear niqabs. That's another thing that they said as well when I spoke to them. They said, look, we're a tribal society. We do not expect the cosmopolitan capitals of the Ummah to be like this. Yemen and Afghanistan and Somalia will be distinctly different to your Istanbul, right? And it will be distinctly different to your
Yemen's like that.
Rabat.
Everyone was
Yeah,
in Yemen.
exactly.
But yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your Islamabad will be different to your Dhaka. That will be different to your Kabul. They go, this is just the nature of and they kept saying that. They kept saying that. Look, this is our way. We're not saying this is the way for you, or that this is the way you should have.
I have mixed feelings about this whole issue. I think it is a legitimate. It's their interpretation. You can justify it Islamically. It's probably extreme, very minority view. I wish they would change it. I think ultimately women are half the ummah, and we were just saying even before we came on air. Ultimately, we have daughters, we have sisters, we have mothers. We love them just as much as our brothers, our sons, etc. Would they be able to live in Afghanistan? I mean, I would like to take my family to Afghanistan on a holiday or to stay for a period of time. Would they do it? No, because they probably would they feel comfortable there? Probably not, because they'd probably be confined to their houses, wouldn't really be able to go out to parks, maybe marketplaces, maybe to dinner, but they'd feel restricted.
Of course, I mean,
so I have mixed feelings about this whole issue.
But are you planning on making hijrah there?
But well, I would love to make hijrah to Afghanistan. I've said it, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think I would love to make hijrah full stop.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable about being a Muslim and settling permanently in Dar al-Kufr. That I've always held that opinion since you've known me.
Yeah.
I've held that opinion.
Look, I know we're kind of digressing, but like far right, the kind of far right constituency, they should actually support these kind of initiatives where people reconnect with their ancestral motherlands. No, honestly, because you're not going to get mass deportations the way you're shouting about it on Twitter, but the most likelihood of Muslims going back to their ancestral motherlands or relocating in a Muslim majority countries, allowing them to actually go there, visit there, build bonds there. But the thing is, you can't win either way, bro. That's the truth. You can't win either way. We stay here and move and consider ourselves to be British citizens of equal status. We're told to go back home if we complain. When we start building connections with those ancestral homes, where then our loyalty is questioned, and then we're accused of being terrorist sympathizers or having dual loyalties.
Yeah.
So you can't win either way. But these kind of far-right bigots should actually support efforts for Muslims to actually reconnect with the Muslim motherlands.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
Just the Jada thing. Yeah, just to finish off, just to finish off on the girls' education. I think what you said, it's not a priority for them. I think that's the nub of it. It's just not a priority. And I wish it was more of a priority. I think it would be better for their society and the relations of Muslims and the attitude of Muslims around the world to Afghanistan, because even our Muslim brothers and sisters, when they view Afghanistan, unfortunately, they view it through the lens of girls' education. I just wish it was more. I mean, if they could find a way of just like educating girls at home, but putting effort into that.
Oh no, but
and giving them a fulfilled life, even if it's under proper Islamic restrictions. But it just doesn't seem to be a priority for them.
So just to clarify, because Abdul Qahar Balkhi mentioned this in our interview. He said, look, there's homeschooling.
There is homeschooling.
There's online teaching. He goes, but yes, more resources need to be put into these to make it an effective national road policy. But the point here is, it's a balance of, they don't seem like it's in their top priority, slash it's something that they may actually believe in.
Oh yeah. No. At the leadership level, they 100% believe in it.
Yeah.
And the word of the Emir is
final.
I mean, even the taxi drivers that I was speaking to,
Look,
Taliban supporters,
they
weren't happy with this decree. They weren't happy with it.
Taliban supporters were like, even they. It's two things: jobs, money. Let our girls go to school.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
So even the Taliban are split on this issue.
Yes.
But the leadership is fixed.
Yeah, and that's fine. And just before we kind of move away from this now, the way they also see it is that we fought two wars. The last one we fought alone.
Yeah.
And no one came to help us. No one came to aid us. And now all of a sudden, everyone wants to butt their noses in and tell us.
They don't care what we think.
Yeah, and tell us how to run our affairs. Where were you when we needed you? Where were you? But instead, you were giving them tanks and airfields and giving them refueling their bombs and allowing their drones to come and bomb us and kill us. That's what you were doing for 20 years.
British Muslims or Western Muslims who are judging the Taliban now, where were they? They were having shisha. They were having shisha on Wilmslow Road and wherever, and chilling, accumulating wealth and possessions. That's what they were doing.
Forget about Western Muslims. They're talking about even the neighboring Muslim countries. Like, if you weren't involved with NATO and helping them and aiding and abetting them, or just remaining neutral and just watching us get slaughtered, why is this issue not an issue for everyone to butt their noses in? We appreciate the nasiha. We appreciate the concern. We are documenting it and logging it. We understand, but we'd appreciate if you just let us deal with this matter. Now, the most recent decree, the spokesman for the Education Ministry, he's basically said, this is an Islamic position, and for the non-Muslims to look into Islam more, then you'll understand the position. I'm kind of paraphrasing.
Yeah,
here.
that's what Zabihullah said. Yeah.
Zabihullah said that, and then Zabihullah also Mujahid Saab, he said, and for those Muslims that are questioning it, then get to know your religion more, right? And another spokesman actually put a challenge out saying, we challenge any scholar within Afghanistan to tell us that this decree that we've implemented is not from Islam.
But then you got scholars like Mufti Taqi Asmani who said the opposite. So,
but they're like, well, he's in Pakistan, we're in Afghanistan. Yeah, you can convey your concerns.
Could you live in Afghanistan?
Alone, yes, but I need to live a privileged life. That's the truth of the matter.
definitely.
Yeah. I know you'd sleep on the floor and have no problems, and you're quite austere like and Zahid like that. I would
Won't go that far, but yeah.
I would. No, it's the truth. Do you remember Qatar World Cup? You're like,
let's go to the beach.
does anyone have a spare floor I can sleep on? As I speak for yourself, I'm staying in a hotel. You can sleep on someone's floor.
I don't think you'd make it in Afghanistan. Not in the country. Maybe in Kabul, but not in the country.
Yeah, in Kabul. Yeah, maybe I'll
struggle.
yeah. But look, I've always said this. There would have to be a sincere need for me to go through that hardship, not just for the jolly of it. I could live in Afghanistan, but I'd have to live alone. I can't take the current family, and it requires a lot of sacrifice and compromise. They'd struggle. They'd struggle.
I think all of our families would struggle.
And outside of Kabul, I may struggle. Yeah. So, but that's the whole point of Hijrah, I guess. If anyone's, whether you go to Turkey or Malaysia or Pakistan or Afghanistan, there is always an element of sacrifice and compromise that comes with Hijrah. That's why there's so much reward in it. If you migrate for the sake of Allah, there is a hardship accompanied, whether that's your first world lifestyles, your comforts, the salary, the food, the takeaways, the social life. The whole point of Hijrah is that there is an element of sacrifice. But if you believe that you can practice your faith freely and comprehensively whilst living elsewhere, then that's a choice that you make. I could live there, but a privileged life maybe in the city. I'd probably struggle in the rural areas and the mountainous areas, and my women folk and my family would definitely struggle. It wouldn't just be a culture shock, it'd be a radical culture shock. Because even fellow Muslims from other conservative Muslim countries may find aspects of Afghan life under the Islamic Emirate a bit different. But other things won't come as a different. Other things may be celebrated. For example, you never did you see a single woman being advertised anywhere?
Oh no, of course not. Yeah.
Did you hear music anywhere?
No.
Do you know what the brothers said to me? They said to me, and by the brothers I mean the brothers that I was with, the entourage, and the brothers that were hosting me, that were not part of the government or anything like that. They were like, we can guarantee you that there's not a single bottle of alcohol sold in this country. No one is licensed to sell khamr in this country. There's not a single pig here for the taste and the likes of tourists. There's no clubs and discos. There's no betting houses.
There's no LGBT pride.
There's none of this stuff. Because in the Muslim countries, in our brother nations, and they should always refer to the Muslim countries as brother nations.
Look, ultimately, I've always said, we are living in Dar al-Kufr here. That is an accurate description. We are living.
Do you see Britain as home though?
I do not see Britain as home. No.
Well, not at all.
I do not feel at home here, but I don't feel at home anywhere else either. You know, even Sri Lanka, which is my birthplace. When I go back there, I feel like a foreigner. You know, in the Muslim world, I can love it, but at the same time, it's obvious people treat me like a foreigner.
Like a foreigner.
Yeah, so I don't feel at home anywhere. But Britain is not my home.
Okay, Robert,
at all.
Robert, is Britain home, bro?
It is. I can't sever who I am. You know, I embraced Islam after being born here, and I have no other place to call home anyway. So it's a different experience for me, absolutely.
You may be surprised by my answer, but there are aspects of it which is undeniably about myself. That's undeniably British, and then there is an aspect of it which is home. Because how would you define home? It's where you live.
Are you happy when you come back? When you get on that plane, coming back from holiday or work assignment, and you're going back into Heathrow or whatever? How do you feel?
I'm excited, and I miss my family.
The family, all right.
Yeah, fine. I miss my family, my friends.
But not you don't miss like the green pastures of England or whatever.
But you live in a part of London. I live in an area where there's majority Muslims.
Yes,
So I'm coming back to a Muslim
You
majority
do have
area.
a good community there.
Yeah, so I'm coming back to a community.
So you miss your community.
No,
But that's not Britain, is it? That's your Muslim community
That's a
in
part of
Queen's
Britain.
Park.
No, but it's a part of Britain, and I miss the Lithuanians as much as I miss the Pakistanis. No, but
I don't know.
I enjoy like an English holiday. Do you?
staycation. I love staycation.
Oh, you do?
I
Okay.
just went to Durdle Door, and and that was beautiful. Obviously, there are parts of Britain when the sun shines. There's amazing landscapes in this country.
Yeah.
And I mean, I grew up in North Wales, and amazing place. when the
Good,
sun
bad, or
shines.
ugly. It's home for now until it isn't home, because home is where you reside.
But what I just find it difficult, like a believing, practicing Muslim who knows his or her deen, feeling comfortable in the pit of Dar al-Kufr. I find that contradictory. I don't know how they can do that.
You can.
I don't think we should feel comfortable here, or
Okay.
future generations.
Okay, fair. No, you're right in that regard, but I think there's enough accommodation in non-Muslim countries, Roshan. Let's be frank about it, brother. There's enough accommodation, at least in Britain, not France, but at least in Britain, where you have enough options and services there where you can kind of live in a Muslim bubble. Let's be honest about it. Alam Rock, parts
Then
of
you
East
turn on the
London,
radio and in the car, and the first thing you hear is Taylor Swift or whatever, and
switch it up to something else, innit?
yeah, but it's just like
When are you gonna
You
make
look at
it?
the billboards, and there's naked women, and it's kind of.
So
We
when
live in this environment, don't we?
so when is the point that you make hijab then? I'm asking you.
Yeah, well, but this is a personal thing, because obviously, if I'd make the hijrah, I need to make it with my family.
Yes.
So it's not just me, and
I don't-
obviously
for me, this is
elderly.
true.
I've got elderly parents
That's
here
true
as
as
well.
well.
They're not going to move anywhere. So it's just me fantasizing, I guess.
Yeah.
But
reality is
if it was just me, I would not be in this country. Yeah, if it was just me, but it's not just me. There are multiple
Yeah.
things that I have to consider.
Yeah. So hijrah for me would have to be at that point where practicing the basics of my faith is becoming untenable, criminalized, or difficult. Right.
Heading that way.
We're heading that way, but we're not there yet.
Give it 20 years.
So until that point, or we're nearing that point, or I'm foreseeing that point, regimes of our ancestors from other lands.
Of course.
Look, Hasina's just gone down after 50 years. When I go back to Bangladesh, inshallah, next month, it's going to be a completely different feeling, because there's certain things when I used to go that I could not say or do, right? But you can hear. So hijrah for me is an option. It should be an option for all Muslims. Not Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, live this life as if you're a traveler.
Yeah.
Meaning don't get comfortable anywhere,
Yeah.
right? And you don't know what the future holds. But for now, this is home. For now.
Seeing as we're talking about the West a lot, one thing I do want to discuss on the program while we've got you here is, I don't know if you saw this while you were out there because you were so busy, but there was a massive reaction.
Oh, we definitely saw it.
Oh, yeah,
all of
absolutely.
from all of the Western,
Yeah.
pro-West Afghan diaspora,
Yeah.
basically. The ones that probably hate Islam a little bit. They probably don't like the fact that Afghanistan's an Islamic Emirate. They don't like the Taliban, and they don't like anyone going there and
Yeah.
speaking about it
At
any
all.
other way.
Yeah, at
than,
all.
So you were getting slammed. We got slammed because we just discussed it
By
on
association.
one of our, we were attacked by association.
Some of these guys made
And
a
it was
tweet on us.
so-
Did you see what that
Yes,
tweet?
yeah,
It's like they're not even Muslim. They're
Yeah.
not Muslims. I was like, what? I was like, how can you say that?
Exactly, but it was quite funny. I thought it was hilarious. But what do you make of it? Because they were saying all sorts of stuff. They were saying that you're Taliban propagandist, and we
Not
were
mad.
accused of all sorts as well. Like why a lot of people say to us like, "Oh, you're not Afghan. How dare you talk about it? How dare you have a different view to me, this Western Afghan?"
Okay.
Do you want to respond to all this? 'Cause
First,
you were there.
Yeah, first and foremost, al-Muslimun al-Ikhwa. The Muslims are brothers. Our affairs are the same. I accept anyone talking about the affairs of Bangladesh, so long as it comes with genuine care and concern for the betterment of that said nation and its people. So that stuff I don't buy. I don't take that from an Arab telling me about Palestine. In the same way, I don't take that from an Afghan telling me about the affairs of the Afghan people. So that forget about that. As for their concerns and their hatred, there's a spectrum of it. Some are genuine and sound and come from what appears to be at least from a neutral place, but a lot of it comes from these are people that either collaborated with the occupation, they benefited from the occupation, they worked under the occupation, they enjoyed the kind of religious laxity of the occupation. They have fully adopted Western notions of freedom and women's rights and these kind of things. They liked having discos and clubs. They liked having these kind of places where men and women mix frequently. They liked having, so there's a spectrum of that stuff.
That's why they're annoyed, because they can't go to Kabul and do a disco.
Some of them,
they want silly feminism in Afghanistan.
You go to their Twitter account,
quite frankly.
You go to their Twitter account, and if you were to say, because I followed some of it, and I thought, okay, fine, let me see if this person appears to be a religiously devout person, right? And someone who differs with the Imara on religious issues. No, they're like, some of them are drinkers and clubbers.
Yeah, just idiots.
Fully adopting un-Islamic things, saying, so I'm like, okay, so that seems like the creme de la creme bunch of the critics.
Yeah.
But there was like, I'd say about 15 to 20% that came from a neutral point.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't see any. I just thought they were all a bunch of...
No, the loudest ones were all kind of like collaborators and people that instigated and benefit from the occupation and weren't really Islamic themselves. But I saw a small portion of people who just like, look, man, we appreciate what the Taliban did for 20 years. We understand that they fought the occupation. We also wanted a more Islamic and conservative Afghanistan, but this stuff is too much. Right? Your Pashtun ways is too much. You can't impose that on us under the facade of it being Islam. I did see that, right?
All right.
Went into their profiles and they seemed like religious conservative people.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, does that mean irreligious people cannot have a view about the Taliban? You absolutely can. But we're just talking about
We just don't care what you think.
Yeah, the depth of the argument, the depth of the contention, you need to present it. Why do you believe that those things that were prevalent under the occupation is socially and spiritually better for the people of Afghanistan compared to it now? Can you have that sound conversation with these people? No, because they get irate. Some of them maybe have had members jailed or killed by the Islamic Emirate. I don't know. But the point is, if you're going to have an argument and a discussion, first don't make takfir on us, which is what a lot of them did. Secondly, ground your contention on a proper basis, right?
Yeah.
And it's rarely, if ever, from an Islamic basis.
Yeah,
They're bitter. They lost their home
true.
in their country, and
they can't go. They see you going there enjoying yourself and having a whale of a time, and they can't do the same thing.
A lot of these people that emigrated, or they left the country after 2021, they were opportunists. They didn't have to emigrate. They weren't under any threat.
Many chose to.
Because obviously we know that a lot of Asians and Africans, they're desperate to get to the West because they live in a poor economic countries.
Anything for better money, better life.
Better money, better life. Yeah, they took advantage.
Yeah, look. Any kind of far right enthusiasts in GB News and Talk TV guys that are tuning into this will tell you this, right? You know, these people that are coming on boats legally and illegally, they're not coming here because of democracy and freedom and values. They're coming for socioeconomic reasons. They're coming to make an earner, get money, earn money, legal, illegal, support their families back home, and maybe establish themselves here. They're not coming here for these perceived notions of freedoms and stuff like this. This is the truth. They're coming here for purely, if not entirely, for economic reasons, and if they're genuinely, escaping persecution and stuff like that. One last thing I was going to say about this whole the Afghanistan trip. So many Western journalists have gone and spoken to Taliban officials.
Yes.
Zabihullah Mujahid has been interviewed by practically every media outlet, as has Balki at the beginning, as has Suhail Shaheen. Right? He even went to Piers Morgan's show. There are travel vloggers and people visiting Afghanistan, non-Muslims, but as soon as we go there to have some balanced interviews, all of a sudden we're labelled as Taliban propagandists and stuff like that. It's nonsense. I don't buy it. It's utter BS.
Are we pro-Taliban?
You don't have to.
You're the editor. You tell us.
I wish them a lot of success. Look, this is ultimately, historically, let's put it in a historic perspective. This is the first real attempt to set up a Sunni Islamic state since the fall of the Khilafah, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, some people
like the serious attempt.
Yeah.
The Shias have had Iran. Now the Sunnis have got Afghanistan. So would we really want to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because we may not agree with their attitude to girls' education? So I'm supportive of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, but I consider myself to be a critical friend. Not that they care; they don't care what I think, and fair enough. They shouldn't care what I think, but that's my position. So are we pro-Taliban? A little bit, yeah, of course.
Don't shoot yourself down. You're a big...
Not pro-Taliban, pro-Islam. That's what we are, and it doesn't matter who the vehicle for implementing Islam is. We'll support anyone whatever the name is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I'll say before you say what you want to talk about next, Dilly, is that, you know, the fact is that when I look at the Islamic Emirate and these countries and how they're, you know, doing things which the West disagrees with, like female education, I look at the quality of education we've got here in this country and you think, well, you're so much better, do you? Gender confusion on kids, what the heck is that all about? And you're wondering, why don't they want to, why are they so concerned about implementing a halal, safe education system? Well, they look at what we do over here and they're like, what on earth is this world coming to?
I don't think British Muslims should send their girls to school here, by the way. You know, I think they should withdraw their kids from school, maybe, especially the girls, because it's corruption, it's facade. 100%.
Yes. We need someone like the Taliban to come here and shut down education and fix it up. Fix it up.
Can we edit that, please?
Cut that bit out.
The point I'm trying to make is that the education system in this country and in the West in general is in a mess. It's in crisis mode. It's a disgrace. And I'm not just talking about all these crazy ideologies that they're pumping onto our kids, by the way, indoctrinating them with all these crazy ideas that are messing them up so much they don't even know how to identify. But even the quality of education is terrible in this country. Like, they're not even learning properly. You know, that's how bad it is. And so the point I'm trying to make is, how dare Afghans that live here go over there and lecture, or anyone go over there and lecture them about education, when the education here is nowhere near as good as it should be.
And what Muslim country has got gender relations perfect? None of them have. You know, you go to Turkey, you mentioned Turkey. I mean, is that an example of
Turkey? No, Turkey.
I mean, half the women are going there with no clothes on, you know, in Turkey and stuff like that. Is that the Islamically best model?
So look,
look how women are treated in the streets. Sorry, Dilly. Look how women are treated in the streets over here. They're sexually assaulted every day. Almost every woman in this country experiences sexual assault on the train, on the way to work, at work, in school, wherever else.
On a night out.
And then you want to ask me why are the Taliban so concerned about their women's safety? Okay, maybe culturally you don't understand what it's like to wear a hijab or a niqab or anything like that. But don't lecture me about, oh, your great society, because this country, in terms of women's rights, is a bloody disgrace. Over to you, Dilly.
So just 2 points there. You know, asking, are we pro-Taliban? I don't think we have to be pro or anti anything. We just, I think we are just editorially supportive of independent efforts to make nations and countries more Islamic, right? Yeah. And any non-Muslim that has a problem with that, but at the same time has a problem with migration and too many Muslims and Muslims and mosques, you should want Muslims here to reconnect with their ancestral motherlands, right? Or else we're not going back. That's the thing, you know, ethno-nationalists that want a white Britain with maybe 4% of coloured people, right, in their head. Ultimately, what they're calling for is civil war. If you really want Muslims to actually go back to their ancestral motherlands, you need to give them the space to visit, space to connect, space to invest without their loyalties being questioned. So I think editorially, we're just supportive of any Muslim majority country that is trying to at least establish some type of Islam, gradually, radically, whatever way, and so long as it has popular support, right? Because I don't want people to say, oh, well, ISIS tried, then you got to... No, because ISIS was unequivocally and widely rejected by the Ummah, right? And not even accepted by Syrians and Iraqis themselves. And they used to go up to a lot of un-Islamic stuff. With regards to the women's education, bruv, and this stuff, I think Muslims have become very comfortable in the West, including ourselves, right?
Not me, by the way.
Okay, including ourselves. And I think that living here, we've become accustomed to certain things, and there are undeniable aspects of us which culturally we are Western.
Yes.
And we have made these compromises in our deen, whether it's the way we allow our children to go to school, whether we should be taking more precaution in their schooling and education, in terms of our women folk going out to work, a reliance on them to be dual earners, all this kind of stuff. We made huge compromises on. It can be argued that it was circumstantial and necessary because just the way life is. People from those countries and those parts of the world, especially the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, they see these things. I'm like, if that's where you guys are now in the West, and this is where some of our sisters and brothers are in some of the brother nations, right? And the starting point of it, we identify to be school and education, and we're trying to lock this off at the roots. And that is where the difference is, I guess, is going to be happening. Now, what type of girls' education is allowed in Islam and to what age? And ultimately, what they are saying is that we have an interpretation of it. We deem it to be Islamic and culturally in aligned with our ways. and what other Muslim nations, forget about Western nations, I'm not interested in what they've got to say, but other Muslim majority nations, ulama, basically saying that, look, no, we deem this to be actually something that girls are supposed to have access to up to a particular age. Look at other countries that are very conservative, and they'll cite Iran, they'll cite Saudi, they'll cite other Muslim majority countries that claim to be Islamic, and say, look, well, they allowed their girls, and look, they've segregated it, they've separated it, and that's it. It's just going to be that. I don't think they care much for the Westerners.
No.
I don't think they care much for the opinions of Western Muslims.
No.
And quite frankly, I don't think they care for the opinions of those who didn't fight alongside them
Yeah.
in liberating
enough.
their countries.
Fair enough.
And I posit this to you, Muslim or non-Muslim, that if you've lost a limb and you've lost family members, entire tribes and families in fighting an occupation, which was then handed back over to the guys you were fighting, would you take the opinion of outsiders seriously in your internal affairs? If the answer is no, then be consistent and apply the same to the Taliban.
Well,
Should we bring it to a close, Robert? Anything else you want to ask, Dilly? Or
well, I guess the only other thing to mention would be that, because obviously there's pros and cons, I think, that people have been highlighting when discussing the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. It's been 3 years now, so they've had time. But I think one of the biggest problems that the country faces is the sanctions, isn't it? Western sanctions crippling the economy.
You know, it's
and
perceived
stability.
sanctions. I didn't know this. Right now, as we speak, there are no active sanctions against the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. What the case is that they've got frozen assets,
yes.
and certain countries that have existing bilateral or economic ties with the Western powers, they are scared to openly trade with Afghanistan. That's what it is. But there's not, the way there's sanctions against Iran and there was against North Korea, those type of sanctions don't actually exist. As we speak, there are Western entrepreneurs and businessmen and investors in Kabul as we speak, trying to find ways to establish their businesses and invest more. One of the key interviews I did was with Dr. Farouk Azizi, the chief advisor to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Pros of the 3 year of the Islamic Emirate: a radical drop in opium and methamphetamine usage. 85% of opium fields have been cut, and alternative produce incentives have been given to farmers. From a religious point of view, saying to people that, look, there's barakah. It may not give you as much money as heroin and opium, but there's barakah in your blessings. Grow this. 85%. Drug addiction has dropped radically. One of the documentaries I'm going to be releasing in a week or so is about how they're tackling head-on the issue of rehabilitation. Some may see as forceful and heavy-handed, but guess what? How many Hafiz of Quran have you met that were opium addicts? How many guys that were opium addicts that end up leaving this rehabilitation centre as electricians and DIY guys and bricklayers? It was eye-opening. Corruption is scarce. There was a time during the occupation you couldn't go from one end of Kabul to another without a bribe or without your phone getting jacked. That's not the case anymore. Bandits are being punished harshly. There's little to no organised crime. Right? You find in most major capitals, east and west, you find organized crime. There is no organized crime. There's no high level crime. Yes, there is the threat from ISIS-K, and I think 1 or 2 other groups. But again, the threat is not as much as it was back in 2021, 2022. Bribes are little to nothing now. The roads are safe.
Peace and security.
Peace and security. Women are not harassed and sexually. There is no official access to brothels and stuff like this. They are working on, 272 roads have been completed in 3 years in Kabul. That's more road completions than I can think Hasina has done in 15 years, I think. But they've completed 272 roads, new roads, and repairing existing infrastructure. I've done a documentary on that as well. Kandahar to Kabul, the Taliban's road to success. They're focusing a lot on roads. These new bypasses, they're building this thing that they call it like our M25. It's like an in road and an external road in different ways to enter and exit Kabul. So these areas are not given much focus. These are the way they've dealt with opium addiction, opium production, infrastructure, the way they are reaching out to other Muslim majority nations and trying to create trade deals and bilateral agreements and stuff like this. But yes, the fact that not a single country except China recognizes them is an issue. The fact that $9.5 billion of national assets have been frozen that have not been given to the victims of 9/11 is a problem. The fact that many countries and NGOs, which was one of the biggest sources of jobs, remember this as well, During the occupation, there were lots of jobs. NGOs and these bodies that were linked to the occupation or NATO America, they provided jobs. Now that they're not there, there is a massive unemployment issue because they provided so many jobs. For NGOs to be reintroduced back into Afghan society, there's a trust issue here because it's nearly NGOs that are the spreaders of ideological ideas, right? They come with laudable and praiseworthy causes, but they end up spreading other things. This has always been the way of Western NGOs. So there's all these issues, but they're trying, and in 3 years they've done a lot. And they've done a lot considering they've been ravaged with 40 years of war with 2 superpowers. No country recognizes them except for China. $9.5 billion frozen assets. Considering that, they've done a lot more in 3 years that many developing Muslim countries can say that their rulers and their despotic regimes have done in 15 years. And I mean that. I mean that. I saw for myself the documentary that's going to be coming out. That's called Kandahar to Kabul. It just focused. Jamal, you've seen that, right? And it's looking good, isn't it?
Very good.
So like the road works. Like.
So how long will that take now? Kandahar to Kabul.
Driving.
Now it takes about 9 hours.
Yeah. Well, with the new highway, hopefully it should be somewhere between 3 to 4 hours.
Wow.
Right. And they're working on that. They're working on their own M25. And the reason why that is because they want more economic growth and people coming in and out of Afghanistan and Kabul, for the center of commerce to be accessible to the rest of the country. I asked them, are they just focusing on Kandahar and Kabul? They said, no, we're focusing up on Shir, we're focusing on Nuristan, we're focusing on other areas. So these are the areas which Western media doesn't focus on. Yeah, you don't focus on, even Muslims, this is a nation that's been ravaged with 40 years of war. We've seen Gaza in 10 months, right? If you're going to have husn al-dhan for the Gazans and the Palestinians, you must have husn al-dhan for the Afghanis. And if you're wondering to yourself, why is the voice against the Islamic Emirate is so loud and vocal in the West, is because for whatever reasons, these are the people that left. They either left because they were escaping war, persecution, but the guys that stayed and fought are the ones who are now running the country. And that's an undeniable fact. Trump acknowledges that. The British government acknowledges that the guys that they fought for 20 years are now the de facto government of Afghanistan. And that's why the Taliban, for now, is not a prescribed terrorist group. If it was a prescribed terrorist group, Roshan, would we go there?
No, we wouldn't.
We wouldn't go there.
We wouldn't be talking about it today.
We wouldn't talk about it today.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is that just because most of the world hasn't formally recognized the Islamic Emirate, they have recognized that it is the de facto government that runs Afghanistan now. That's the UAE, that's Qatar, that's Pakistan, that's many of the Central Asian countries, that's Iran, that's China. These are the countries that kind of openly but not openly dealing and trading with Afghanistan.
Yes.
Right? And whether you like the Taliban or not, these are the people in sandals and shalwar kameezes that fought the occupiers for 20 years and the country was handed back to them.
The only thing I want to say before we close is that I think we took our eye off the ball a little bit with Afghanistan in terms of our coverage, 5 pillars, obviously with Gaza, quite rightly so, because we stopped covering everything else, almost,
Definitely
every other issue. But we do want to recommit to Afghanistan. When I went out there for the first time, my intention was to go there every year. And I think between us, we can make these yearly visits happen. But also, we want to give it more kind of regular coverage. So we do intend to appoint an Afghan correspondent.
Definitely.
Who can feed us videos and articles, opinion pieces, just to keep the English language speaking ummah up to date with what's happening in the Emirate.
Inshallah.
Okay. Inshallah.
Well, Dilly Hussain, thank you so much for joining us on the episode of Muslim Uncensored. It's always great to have you, and thank you to everyone at home for watching as well. We would appreciate your go on in. He's always got one more thing to say.
Yeah, no, it's just brothers and sisters. I know the month of August has been a bit haphazard when it comes to Muslims Uncensored, and before that the general election. So we haven't had a regular kind of rhythm. People have been on holiday. Robert's been having 10 more kids, and Robert had a baby boy, as you know. But inshallah, we'll try to get it back on a even keel now every Wednesday, unless there's a breaking news story. That is, every Wednesday we'll bring out an episode of Muslims Uncensored, inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, please do leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I'm sure we'll be reading them, and we'd love to hear your views about Afghanistan and whether or not you'll be visiting in the near future, inshallah. I think every Muslim should probably go and support our brothers and sisters anywhere in the Ummah that they need support with. So thank you very much.
If you're a traitor and a collaborator, you can do one.
Yeah, I think that was well established in the show. Missions. What did we learn in this week's episode,
Your
brothers and
comments will be
sisters?
deleted.
Absolutely, but
No, they won't. They won't.
yeah, keep them there because we like to have a laugh at them when they're in the comment section there. Anyway, please like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel immensely. And until next time, we will catch you again, inshallah. But for now, it's Assalamu alaikum.